Okay. Hello and welcome to Adobe InDesign Family Book Layout. My name is Caitlin and I'm a library instructor and research specialist for the Plano Public Library. And today I will be assisted by my chat facilitator, Trey, a librarian. Please say hi, Trey.
Oh, gotta find the mute button. Hello.
Today we will be covering how to set up and format a family history book in Adobe InDesign. This class is meant for intermediate users. However, all skill levels are welcome in this class. We will be using Adobe InDesign to format all components of a family book, but there are some free alternatives such as Microsoft Word if you do not have access to InDesign. Currently, all 5 of the Plano Public Library locations are offering access to Adobe Creative Cloud, so you can edit your family history book and other projects for free at any of those locations. If you have any genealogy-specific research questions about family book creation, please refer to our archive of virtual courses on the Plano Public Library's Genealogy Center website. So let's get started. So what is a family history book? It is a balance between a photo book and a narrative book. A photo book tends to be a short book that focuses mainly on pictures, while a narrative book is a longer book that is mainly text. So a family history book is an integration of these two with genealogy records and photos with narrative text. An example would be a standard book, a combination book, or a descendant tree list. Are there any questions about this?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. All right. And a big shout out to our librarians, Trey and Sarah, for their assistance with the genealogy portion of this family history book. You can find online services, collection resources, and an archive of all previous genealogy virtual courses at this link. All right. So, formatting your family history book. Before you begin, it's very important that you maintain a consistent style. This is because it makes it easier to read and it's more professional looking. It also is great because it includes page layout, grammar, spelling, punctuations, font type and size, numbering, and abbreviations. And so what makes up our family history book? You have what is called the front matter, and this includes your title page, your copyright page, and your dedications epigraph. Special note on copyright. So you can find examples by looking at previously published books. You can open any nonfiction book and find a copyright page, but it is important to note that this lasts the duration of the author's lifetime plus 70 years, and you can register a copyright at copyright.gov. A copyright can be registered up to 3 months after publication, but it's also important to note that you have a copyright on your book regardless of registration. You have a copyright the moment you write words on a page. They are yours, and it's an essential part of the publication process. Front matter also includes your table of contents, lists of charts, illustrations, maps, etc., and a foreword or a preface. Any questions so far about front matter?
No, don't look like anybody's typing anything, so we're good.
Okey-doke. To continue with our parts of a book, we have the main body. And this is going to include generally an introduction and text, epilogue, or your afterword. Now your text, that is generally going to be your chapters, your sections, everything, the meat of what makes up your book. And none of these things have to be excessively long. Your introduction can be a page or two, or it can be 12 pages. It generally is all about whatever message you're trying to create or put out with your book. Now the back matter, the last piece that kind of sandwiches your book together, is made up of acknowledgements, because we all have people to thank, our appendices, which are notations that you want to reference, additional notes, a glossary of terms, or a bibliography and reference list, or an index. Others that you can include are abbreviations, chronology, etc. All of these things are just things that assist in the understanding of your book. But again, these are all optional pieces. Everything that you're going to include, make sure it serves a purpose in your overall book. So getting into the formatting aspect, family history books tend to be 3 standard sizes. You're going to see a journal size, which is about 5.5 inches by 8.5, or 6 by 9, or 7 by 10. However, it is very important that you confirm that your printer can print whatever size book you're wanting to print, especially if you're going to work from a custom size. Your printer is your best friend in this project, and everything that we're going to be discussing from this point on, and everything in InDesign, is all about your output. So if you're looking to print your family history book, you want to think about how everything you're putting digitally on the page is going to print. This is especially important with your page layout. Your margins, the recommendation is that they are at least 0.8 inches. That is fairly large on a digital page. However, it is large because if you don't have this space for printing, you risk having words cut off. You risk having the overlay when you're printing and binding, things disappearing in the binding. You want to have that space so everything looks clean and legible. Mirror margins, that's a feature you can have for double-sided documents. And in the case of a family history book, everything that you are setting up is going to have multiple pages, and you will be doing double-sided printing. So you want to make sure that your margins on the exterior, the outside margins notated here, are going to be the same. You don't want to have inconsistent margins, as that inconsistency can make it look very unprofessional. And then our gutter, that is going to be your inside margins. But in addition, it's the extra space allowed for binding. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to risk any of your words getting cut off by the binding process. So allowing for that excess gutter space will negate the risk of words and material getting cut off. Any questions? We'll go over this again when we actually get into the software and set up our page. To continue, you want to also think about the space for headers and footers. You want to have those set at least 0.25, 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the page. Again, for the same reason, you don't want anything to get cut off. You don't want any overlap in ink. You want to give everything room to breathe so that your reader has breathing space, so to speak. And that's the same for line spacing in your document. It's recommended for 1.15 to 1 1/4 inch for readability. And you can see the difference below in these examples. This is very close single space text. It's very difficult to read, especially with the font choice. This is sans serif font. It is harder to read. with it being so close together. Now with a little bit more space, this is better. This is a lot easier to read. This one right here is probably the easiest to read. It's not too much space. It's not too close. So all the words you can see are not bleeding together. Now this one right here, this is probably a double space example and it's too much. You're kind of looking at it and thinking there's a lot of breathing room here and you're wasting space. And that's another feature you want to think about when you're printing is how many pages are you including in your book and how is that going to affect your budget? Lastly, you want to think about how page numbers are going to be laid out on your pages. So you want to have a consistent style, so either centered or aligned to the outside margins. And if you have it aligned on the right, you want to make sure it's aligned on the left. Now, our standard font size for book creation is typically 10 to 12 points. And this is an example of everything from 10 to 11 to 12. 24, the only time you will see 24 points font size is going to be for headers, maybe like a section header or a chapter number. Chapter numbers may actually be bigger, but those are the exceptions to the rule. Your font size for 10 to 12, that's going to be your body text. Now, font examples. You heard me say earlier, serif and sans serif. So Times New Roman and Garamond are an example of serif fonts. They have these tails on the end. So they are a much more traditional style font. And over here you have Arial and Tahoma. These are sans serif style fonts. Now, typically it's recommended that traditional style font, the serif font, is recommended for print. And anything for digital is recommended to go with sans serif. That's because it's generally documented that font is easier to read in print with serif style font, and it's easier to read digitally on your screen with sans serif. So with your family history book, think about what style you're going for. Are you doing something more traditional? Then it makes more sense to go with a traditional style font versus if you're going with something more modern to have a matching modern style font. Any questions?
No, looks like we're good.
Cool. All right, images. So you can see here 2 examples of why it's very important to make sure you're having the proper resolution. Now, DPI, that's dots per inch. It's recommended that you have a minimum of 300 dots per inch as this affects the visibility of your image. So 300 dots, or in this case, this example has 600 tiny dots of ink to fill every inch of the print. You're going to get a higher quality print with more dots filling the inches. And if you're trying to get better restoration or colorization, there are available lynda.com tutorials with your Plano Public Library card, or you can also access our Plano Public Library YouTube channel and access previously recorded Photoshop classes to assist in this process. Also, with any file or image that you have, make sure that the naming conventions are consistent. It makes files easy to find, and you don't want to name your file something that you later will not remember, or save it somewhere that's completely separate from all your other book files. So what's next? Think about who is the audience for your book. Is it going to be family members? Are you wanting to publish it in a library? All of this will really affect how you're formatting your book and how you're going to edit the content of your book. So what is your goal? Is it merely to record and create a family history book for your family? Or are you wanting to add it to a genealogy society's collection? Think about what your goal is. Are you wanting to sell it, make any kind of profit, or are you doing it just for love of wanting to have your content and research presented professionally? Would you like it to be sold in bookstores? Available in libraries? Everything that we are thinking through with these questions will influence how you will print your book. Everything you do in InDesign, everything that you're putting into the content and creation of your book will influence how you create that final product. Any questions?
Nope, so far so good.
Excellent. So let's discuss Adobe InDesign. Adobe InDesign is an industry standard publishing application for print and digital media. InDesign allows ease of access for page layout and web design. It's useful for creating flyers, books, magazines, newspapers, interactive PDFs, and more. So the three main tools we will be using in today's class will be the direct selection tool, also known as the black arrow. And you can select this on your keyboard with V, and you can escape other tools to go back to your arrow with the escape key. The type tool, also accessible with T, and the frame tool, also known as the rectangle frame tool, accessible with the keyboard shortcut F. So I wanted to make sure that I go over book files before we jump into the software, because this is what is going to make your family history book really accessible, and it'll make organizing the files and accessing them later easier for everyone. So a book file is an InDesign tool to save multiple files under one single grouping. It allows for the following: consistent application of style, consistent application of changes, sequential page numbering for all linked files, and easier access for multiple files. What I mean by this is you're essentially creating an InDesign file that will link to all the other separate InDesign files. By doing that, you're not going to have one single huge document taking up a lot of space, taking a lot of time to load each time you're wanting to work on it. By having separate files for chapters, for your title page, copyright, for your front matter versus having front matter, body text, and end all in one document, you're going to save yourself time. You're going to also make it easier to access. And with that, let's jump into InDesign. Any questions while I do that?
I think we're ready to rock.
Excellent. All right. So with Adobe InDesign open, you can either watch, take notes, or follow along. It looks like we have a raised hand. Is there a question?
If y'all could type y'all's questions in the chat, I can be able to pose y'all's question.
And I love questions. So while we wait on those, I'm just going to go ahead and briefly go over this screen here. So when you're accessing
there's a question over linking to the software and getting access to Adobe InDesign.
Okay. So you can access Adobe InDesign. You can download a free tutorial through just going to the adobe.com website, and you can download a specific tutorial for InDesign, or you can also subscribe to a content specific. So if you only want access to Adobe InDesign, you can subscribe that way. Or if you're not ready to invest in that just yet, you can also go to any of the Plano Public Library locations and use our Adobe computers. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure I understood completely.
Yeah, so I had a little misunderstanding this thing. It was saying end design, like end of day, instead of in versus in and out. So yes, I think we're good now.
Okay, cool. All right. So when you first open Adobe InDesign, you should see these options over here: create new and open. Those are two different ways of getting into files. So if you already have one saved, you can reopen it, or you can select create new, or you can also go all the way up to file and do new document. But you'll also see here under file new, a little hard on the laptop to select things, book. So as I do want us to use a book file and I want to show you how to set these up, we're going to go ahead and open the book. And what you see here is that it actually prompts you to save it. Because this is, book files are purely an InDesign way to link files within it. So because we're creating something that currently has no content within it, it's going to prompt you just to choose a save location. What I'm going to do is actually go to my desktop and I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to label it Family History Book. And then I'm going to select within that and I'm going to name this my family history book. Again, you want to make sure your naming conventions are easy to understand. So if you have a title for your book, or if you want to name it based on your family name, you can do that as well. So we will save that. It doesn't open anything except for it will open your workspace. It'll open this family history book panel. And this is where you can then add documents. Now, as I don't have any documents for my book set up yet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here to File. I'm going to go to New, and I'm now going to create a new document. So first and foremost, it's important to name your details. I want to show you a couple things first before we jump into front matter, body text, etc. Just to give you some understanding for your book formatting, okay? So we're going to name this book chapter, or we can literally just call it chapter 1, for instance. We're going to change the units of measurement from picas to inches, as picas, points, all those other units of measurement will not be as easily understood as inches. Now we're going to go ahead and go with a standard book size. So I think we're going to take this down to 5.5 by 8.5. We want to make sure our orientation is portrait and not landscape. And because this is a book, we do want facing pages. Facing pages should only be selected when you have multiple pages that are going to be bound. Now, as an example, we're just going to go ahead and set this to 20 pages. Column gutter is set. We only have one. Our margins. So as discussed earlier, you want to have an increased margin for printing. So again, all about our output. 0.875 is a standard printer designation. the minimum is 0.8, 0.875 is going to be the more specific measurement recommended by most printing services. Now you can adjust this link sign over here. When you break that, it allows you to change the bottom or top, have it more or less than any other side. Now, if you link that, it's going to change everything around it to be the same. Now, I don't want it to be an inch and a quarter all the way around, so I'm going to go back, change that back to 0.875. But let's say that I actually don't want the same on top. Let's say I want an inch on top, and on the bottom I also want an inch. But I want to make sure that my inside and outside margins are going to be the same. All right, now bleed and slug, what is this? Now bleed is basically telling your printer that you have something going all the way to the edge. So this is very useful if you're going to create your own cover page. You want to make sure you have space set out on the outside of your document indicating, yes, I do want this printed all the way to the edge of my desired page size. So with adding 1/4 of an inch, you're actually telling the printer, I have an extra 1/4 inch being printed on a larger piece of paper so that they can cut it down to your desired page size. Now, it may surprise you that even for text, they do actually want an overset. They want a bit of a bleed just in case there's any error with printing. So this allows them to cut it down to your page size and allows you to have that safety margin of knowing that all of your content is going to be on your page. Now, slug is useful for communicating with your printer. Slug is an area that you designate to be specific on your workspace where you can write specific notations, specific instructions. So if you know you're going to do something fancy for your cover, like foil stamping or anything like that, that's where you can create sort of a key for your printer to say, hey, that gold color means I want foil stamping. So it's not often used in your preparation. If it's just standard or you're going to use this to send to your printer, most printers have a designated printing house editing staff. So today we will not be using any kind of registration mark. And if you're not sure about any features that you have created, you can always preview your document before you save it, move this aside, and you can kind of take a look there and make sure that that looks like what you want. So this interior purple line, that's going to be your margin. And this exterior red line here, that is your bleed. So again, that is telling your printer to print on a 1/4 of an inch size bigger so that they can cut it down to your desired page size. I think that looks good. So we're actually going to go ahead and create. Does that make sense? Any questions so far?
Doesn't appear that we do at the moment.
Okie doke. Then we will keep moving on. So if you did find that you hit create and you wanted to change something after the fact, there's a couple different ways you can do that. Over here, properties, that is an easy way to adjust your margins, easy way to adjust the page size, separate facing pages, make any kind of view or layout change very quickly. Now, this section over here on the right, those are your panels. And you can adjust that by going up here to Essentials and changing it to any specific thing. If you've never messed with your switcher which is what this is called, I definitely recommend go through, click on one, and see what preset you actually enjoy. Now, for me, I've used Microsoft Word my entire life, so Essentials Classic is honestly my favorite. So as you can see, it has adjusted my workspace. I now have this top ribbon, and I have a different set of panels over here. You are always going to want to have pages. It helps with navigation. It helps with application of master pages. It's very, very useful. We also have our family history book panel still open. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over to my panels and add it here. It's going to make it easier to access later on. Now over here on my left, that is my tools panel. So it's how I can switch from my black arrow to my text tool to the rectangle frame tool. And as you can see, whenever I switch from one tool to the other, this top ribbon here, it changes. So whenever I have the text tool open, I have font choices, I have paragraph options all up here along the top. So going back to pages, what I want to first point out is going to your master pages. So your master page is how you're going to communicate consistent elements to your document and all other documents that you have within your book file. Excuse me. Sorry about that, folks. I needed to clear my throat. But we have our A master, how you would add a new one. Use this plus symbol over here, and you get a new master. And you can actually rename this for your elements that you have in your document. So I always like to start with adding in my page numbers. I like getting that out of the way so I don't have to worry about it later. So you can go to this page by double clicking, and we're already on that. And if you close this, you can see your A master means that you only have navigation on that page. So there's several ways to add page numbers to a document. The easiest way that I know how is simply going to be line up your text tool with your margin over here and drag and drop. And then I like to make sure I have the same size text box. So I will Control C or Command C if you have a Mac, and Control V, Command V to copy and paste. You can also right click and do the same thing. Now, this is where I get some of my favorite features of InDesign. When you drag a box over, those green lines that pop up are guides. And they're essentially showing that you have everything lined up correctly, that it's even and matching. So by dragging this across the page and lining it up with the margin over here, I know that I have these two text boxes lined up exactly the same on either side. And then by double clicking that text box, I can select it again and type into it. So what I'm going to do is type A, and then I'm going to go over here to B, or to this other text box, and type B. But as you can see, it's still on the right side. Excuse me, folks. And what I'm going to do is actually highlight that B, and I'm going to go up to my ribbon and change that to be aligned right. That way, both my page numbers are going to be aligned with that margin. And I actually think it's a little too close to those corners. So what I'm going to do is actually click that black arrow, shift click that text box, and I'm going to drop it down a little bit. And I think I like that a lot better. So now we're going to make sure that it's not A and B on every single page. We're going to highlight that A, go up here to type, insert special character, go to marker, and select current page number. Now, me personally, I can't remember more than one keyboard shortcut or more than 2 directives for a keyboard shortcut. I can't do Control-Alt-Shift+N. So it's going to be easier for me to tell you how to do it by going up to each panel or menu option. So you're going to do that for A. You're going to go over here to B, and you're going to go ahead and go back up, insert special character, go to markers and current page number. So it turned it both into A because they're on the same master. When you go back to pages with your black arrow and you select any page in your document, you can see it's 2, 3. We're going to close that and we're actually just going to scroll up. And now we have our page numbers applied to this document. And if you wanted your page numbers centered, you would have done the same thing on the master page. You would have just made sure it was centered on your page. What that would have looked like, going back to pages and selecting your master. Is simply going to be click and drag. When you see that purple line pop up, that's your center. And as you can see, any change that you make on the master page, it is applied to all subsequent pages. Now that's not quite where I want that, so I'm going to click and I'm going to make sure I align it back up where I want it. Are there any questions about page numbering so far?
Does not appear.
Okay. All right. So before we go too much further, what I'm going to do is actually, because I don't want to redo the page numbering element continuously, I'm going to go ahead and go to File and Save As. Going to go to Desktop, Family History Book. I'm going to make sure I save this as Chapter 1. It's always a good idea to save your progress. Save multiple times. You'll see me save several times throughout this process. We're going to do File Save As again, because I want the same formatting for all following documents. So I'm going to go ahead and do this 2 more times. To show you an example with 3 chapters. All right. So I have my family history book opened here. What we can do now is actually add files in. And now you can see we only had 20 pages for each chapter. What InDesign has already done for us is adapted each to be 1 through 20, 21 through 40, 41 through 60. So now whenever I go into those files, so I have chapter 3 open, I'm going to go back up to pages and I'm going to select a page. That page numbering is already automated and I don't have to do anything else with it. That's going to be the same with all paragraph styles that we create, all character styles, and apply to our documents. So we're going to go back to our family history book and we're going to open chapter 1. Because we opened this one, we added it to our file first. This is the style source. So everything that we put in chapter 1 is going to be applied to the following files. Does that make sense? It also has dots implying that the document is open. But you can also still close it out. Make sure you save before closing. And it updates in real time. So rather than having multiple files open, possibly slowing down your machine, you can work on individual segments, add in more, add in less, and have things apply much faster. Again, if I'm explaining something and it doesn't make sense, do feel free to post a question in the chat. I love questions. It doesn't even have to be about anything specific that we're doing right now. All right, so I want to get into formatting your document. So we're going to add in text. So this is where we get to have some fun. So this is our first page, and we see our margins, and it's going to be a different formatting need for your first page of the chapter than it is going to be for your subsequent pages. Now, what we're going to do is actually go ahead to our text tool. We're going to go ahead and drag across to match our margins. And if you have a document that's already written in Word, this is where it's going to be so much easier to file and place your content rather than try and retype everything into InDesign. You get to save yourself a lot of time and effort by doing this.
Can I interrupt for just a moment, Caitlin?
Of course.
We had a question, the assumption that you can add and delete pages within the individual chapters. So you've got the template essentially created chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and they're all 20 pages. So it's an assumption you may have a 18-page chapter or
absolutely,
32-page chapter.
That is a great question and a great point. So that's where, again, I love the Pages panel. It's also where if you were more comfortable with that property view, you can add panels by going up here to Window and actually opening Properties. So there is 1,001 different ways to do a thing in InDesign. So you can either subtract and add pages in your Properties panel. It's set to text since that's what I have open. If I just go back to the black arrow, it resorts to your page settings, okay? But that's not my preferred way to add or delete pages in a document. I love the Pages panel. It's just pure simplicity. So if you have too many pages, simply go right here, drag it to that garbage icon that's in that panel, and woohoo, you only have 19 now. You need to add it back. That's okay. You can hit that plus sign and add it back or add it in the middle. So it's going to be very easy to add, or again, you can go to File and go to Document Setup, and you can add pages that way or subtract it again. Does that make sense? Okay. That was a really great question. It's very, very, very helpful to understanding how InDesign works. So we're going to go ahead and add in some text, and we'll get into how to format some features that way. So we're going to go here. There's a couple different ways to do that. You can do File, Place. So it's Control-D is the keyboard shortcut on how to do that. Now, I previously saved some documents because I wanted to showcase some different document sizes. So just to give you an idea, this is a 95-page influx, and it is a huge, huge drain on your file size. So the larger a file size is, the harder it is going to be able to load. So as you can see, I've overset text there with that red arrow. So I'm going to select that, scroll down to my next page, and link it with that. So it's a very easy way to add in all of your previous text without having to type it in again. It also will adjust to the text box, so you don't have to worry about losing content. Now, a faster way to do this is going to be linking pages. And how you can do that is going to be in your master page. So what I'm going to do is actually go back up to my A master, and I'm going to create a text file on here. And what I'm going to do is use that black arrow tool, and I'm going to select that white box where the overset text is. I'm going to go ahead, click, and I'm linking it. So saying this icon right here is how you would link documents on your master page. Now, I think I didn't line that up quite right, so I'm going to adjust that. And now I'm going to go back to my pages. And this is where you can see I made a mistake whenever I filled in that text. So I'm going to jump here and actually adjust that. So as you can see, it doesn't matter how long you've used a software, you can still make mistakes, but it is very easy to fix, I promise. So we're going to scroll up and actually link it back to the correct page. And because this was a master page element, we're going to Control-Shift-Click. Things are not linking correctly, but that's okay. InDesign is smart enough to autoflow all the text. Woohoo, there we go. As you can see, that was a 95-page text document. And so it automatically added in pages. I am left with 224. Now, that would be almost an entire book. Now, what I want to show is how, if you save this and go into your files and actually look at the size of your document, whoops, I wanted to go to my desktop. There we go. You can see you went from 1,000 kilobytes to 4,000. And when you go to open one versus the other, this is going to take a lot longer to open than this is. And since we are only looking at having 18 or more, like anywhere from 12 to maybe 35 pages per chapter, that file size is going to be a lot closer to 1,500 to 2,000 kilobytes per chapter versus over 4,000. Does that make sense? And the moment you start adding images to this, it's only going to increase in file size, and it's going to increase the risk of the file getting corrupted or any other issues coming into it. So since that's not what I want, I'm actually going to Control-Z to undo a lot of elements. I'm going to undo all of the placing that I've done, all the linking. As you can see, it's still loaded here, but I can Control-Z and take that away too. Control-Z, Control-Shift-D, Z are going to be your best friends. So anytime you do something that you don't want to do, you can fix it fairly quickly. All right, so let's go back and we're going to actually Control-D. We're going to place a document that we do want. We want that 19-page. But before we do that, I have to redo that linking pages on our master's page. So if you missed it the first time, this is how you would do that. The text tool, click and drag to create your files. Scroll over, click and drag to your margins. Go back to the black arrow. Click, click. And it's top or bottom, it doesn't matter which you're clicking, but now they're linked. So, oh, whoops, and evidently I've got a smaller one there. I only want one. Awesome. Okie-doke. And as you can see, that first page now has confusion. If you Control-Shift-Click, you're actually going to highlight elements. So I'm actually going to delete the one that I created earlier. Whoops. We're going to reapply that to our page 1. Go back here, Control-Shift-Click, and we're going to click and drag that down because we do want space for our section header. And in fact, if you, another third way, because again, there's a million different ways to do this, you can still delete it off of that page once you shift click and open up the options from your master page element. We can go back up here, go to our B page. We can delete that side of the page and apply only we can apply first chapter settings. So we can drag this to there and click here and type A, highlight, increase font size to, let's go bigger. Go big or go home, right? We're in Texas. And we're going to center that. We're going to go back up to type, insert special character, insert marker, and we're actually going to call this a section marker. Now, black arrow, and if we go to apply this, awesome. But we lost our page number. So what we want to do is actually go up here and we're going to create that in the same spot as our other one. And we're going to apply that page number again. And our page numbers are still correct. Excellent. All right, because I do want to show you formatting, what we're going to do, Control-Shift-Click to open that up, and we're going to file, Control-D to place a file. We're going to do the 19-page filler text that I have. We have that overset, switch back to your black arrow, click that red arrow, go ahead and click page 2, Control-Shift-Click, and click. And as you can see from there, because we linked it on our master page, it auto-filled. So now we're getting into some fun aspects of our formatting. As you can see, whoa, I've got 59 pages and a lot of empty pages. So how I'm going to adjust that is actually by going here to my pages. You can tell which pages you have content on. I'll scroll down and I'm actually going to select, scroll up, shift, click, and I'm going to delete. And delete, and that's okay. And in fact, I don't need all of this content for our example, so I'm going to delete that until we get closer to my target page number size. And again, this is filler text, so this is not how you would necessarily have to go about it with your own documents. Now going back up to this first page style, you can see you have two different fonts. You have for your section marker, double click that, you have Minion Pro. So that has a serif and I actually like that. And in terms of your type and font, there's so many options within Adobe that you can choose that it's also fun. You can see previews of everything. Adobe also has something called Open Type Font. So you can select it and also see similar font to that style, or also see if one is a variable. Anything that has VAR is variable, and that means you can adjust the width, height, thickness, everything, which is very fun to play around with if you have the opportunity and time to do so. Now, for me, I'm always a fan of just sticking with Garamond. You can't really go wrong with it. It's a very classic font, and there's options with it. So I'm going to go with Garamond. Now, a good way to apply that consistently to your document and all following documents is going to be creating a character style. So select that in your panel, go to this plus sign and create a new style. You have character style 1, double click that. You get a nice notification sound that you've opened a new window, and you can actually name this. Whoa, all right. My sticky keys popped up. Sorry about that. Type that paragraph. And this is where you can choose your font family, select Garamond, select the size. I want that to be 12-point font. And you can scroll through these. They're not as necessary. You're really just going to want to stick with your general and your basic character format. So we're going to hit OK. And then actually by Control A, selecting all, we can apply paragraph, and look, it's all applied. And I can refer back to that for everything subsequently. Now, I want to have a drop cap for my first paragraph in the chapter. So what I'm going to do is actually go to paragraph styles now and create a new one, double click it to open another screen. And I'm going to name this a drop cap. So over here, you can see a lot of fun features here. So if you are going to have specific indents or spacing for your book, any kind of paragraph rules, any specific justification rules, anything like that that you want to apply for a section or chapter of your book, paragraph styles is going to be your best friend. Now, this is a great and easy way just to apply a drop cap. So character style, we're going to base it off of paragraph. And our drop cap, we actually want to be, let's say 5 and just 1 character. We can preview that just as with our document creation. And whoa, look there. We can see it's a very large drop cap. And you can, again, still preview it until you get the size that you're looking for. So it's a lot of fun. And if you wanted to do the entire word too, you could do it that way. But I would say that it's very hard to know how many characters each time your first chapter is going to have. So it's going to be much easier to have a consistent style for the first letter of each first paragraph in each new chapter. So I think 3 looks pretty good. Let's double check 4. That's more pronounced. And again, we're in Texas. Why not go with bigger? We're going to say okay. And now in your paragraph style menu, you have that new style. This is also if you're going to have a subheading for each chapter, you could go back up to that master page. And let's say that you didn't want just a 1. You could, in fact, make that larger. Just make sure it's centered. Find that pink line in the middle of your page. And then you can create a new text box underneath it and type subheading. And this is also, again, where you can apply it and save it as a consistent style. So let's go ahead and apply that paragraph style to it. But because we want to make it a new paragraph style, we're actually going to go here, name it subheading, base it off of the paragraph, go to basic character formatting, and actually say that we want this to be italic. Hit OK. It didn't apply correctly, but that's okay. We can create a separate character style. Again, more than one way to do everything. I hit enter, closing it before I was ready. Italic, okay. Now when we go back to pages and select that first page, you'll see it's applied already. Control click, control click. And you can change and adjust it to be Introduction to Family History. Also up here for the 1, you can type in chapter 1, or you can name it whatever you like. But that's also where you can find out, oh no, my font is too big, and you can adjust it as needed. Also important can be, oh no, you want this to be centered. So you can go back to your master page, select that, make the orientation centered there, paragraph style, subheading. Make sure you have paragraph rules, justification. Awesome. Tracking normal. Wonderful. Okay. Add in that. Now, when we go back to our other page, that was applied, but it didn't take it. A million ways to get to the same thing. If something doesn't work, try again. Okay. So this is a basic way to get your text in to do some consistent formatting. What we can see next is by going into our next chapter with this preset would be to, one, check that our master pages have applied. It looks like they haven't been applied, so we want to sync our books. And how we can do that is going here, synchronize styles. Okay. We can also, what I'm wanting to show you before we end the class today is make sure that I show you how to sync your master pages. So you want to go to synchronize options and make sure that your master pages are selected. It looks like they are not. So we're going to make sure that's selected and we're going to hit synchronize. Okay. When we go back here, when we see our second page, you can see that that's already applied. Now, what you will have to do before you add in your documents is apply that section B to your new first page. That way, when you go there, you can see that that's been applied. Now, it also looks like our page numbering hasn't been updated. Oh, no, it has. I just evidently still have way too many pages in that first chapter. So let's double check that real quick. And make sure we go here and here and delete some more because again, I made my example files way too big. Okay, so now I'm going to Control S to save. And as you can see, it's grayed out when you just completed a save. I'm going to go back here, go back to page chapter 2, and I'm going to make sure that I update page and section numbers. And when that doesn't work, just hit synchronize again. So it looks like for whatever reason, it's not allowing me to delete those pages. Smart Text Reflow is selected. That's why my pages are off. So I can actually fix that by going all the way here, highlighting this, and just selecting all the text I need to delete. Again, mistakes happen. Sometimes you don't link things correctly or things just get a little off. That's okay. All right. So let's check our family history book again. And you can see that because those changes were finally made with the content, the page numbers have been fixed. All right. The other great thing is your pages will be set up in accordance to how the book is being formatted. So because we deleted so many pages to where we're starting on an even, that first page of your master document is still going to be the same. It will update automatically. Are there any questions about that or anything else we've gone over so far today?
Does not appear at the moment.
All right. So because we are starting to run short on time, I do want to make sure that I point out that for graphics, adding in graphics to your document is going to occur the same way. You're going to place them into your document. And just so I fully explain that, placing is actually linking your files to this, and it's linking them so it achieves the highest quality possible. So just to show you what that would be like, let's see if I can find an image for y'all. So just to show you an example of how this process would work, it loads to your cursor the same way. So you can apply it that way, or that's where the rectangle frame tool comes in. You select that and you can actually draw on a page where you would want that, and then Control D and place in that logo into that frame. And it is a great way to do it without having to resize it. So with the above, with this, you can still resize it to fit on your page, and then go right click, go to fitting, and fit content proportionally to have it fit. Or you can use that rectangle frame tool, draw it, right click, go to fitting, fit content proportionally within that. Now, if it looks pixelated, that's where you go down to display performance from right clicking. Make sure that you choose high quality display, because for instance, if you chose a fast display, it's just going to gray it out. Fast display is really only useful if you're working with a web design. Typical display is what you have. Display performance, choosing that high quality, you can tell a difference immediately. It smooths out all the pixels because InDesign is a vector-based software. It will mathematically equalize everything that you put on your document. Okay, does that make sense? Are there any questions about that or anything else I've shown you so far today?
I just had a comment. Generally needed some more training for sure. And I put the link up there. I was mentioning the lynda.com courses. Lynda has a lot of great beginner, intermediate, and advanced instructional videos, and you can just go self-paced.
I also have 2 previous book creation courses, as well as some other InDesign basics. Any of my InDesign courses on the Plano Public Library YouTube channel.
I'll grab those. I forgot about those.
No problem. And if you want to see more, or if you're really keen to learn more specific function of family book creation, I didn't get to go over the front matter formatting today, nor the back matter. But if you're interested in learning more, please do fill out our survey and notate that you want to learn that specifically. We are very much wanting to create content that our community is interested in, and appreciate you guys attending. So if there's any questions I can answer before we finish today, or if you just want me to keep messing around with the document setup I have, I'm happy to do either. Okay. Well, like I said, if you have any questions, do feel free to type them and Trey will forward them to me. I'll just continue formatting this document and go over some basics of what that would look like. I'll see if I can't show a text strap around these images in the remaining time we have left.
Yeah, we had a question about a quick demonstration about getting the text to wrap around the image. And also they noted that page 46 did not move to the left margin.
Oh, you're right. That would be because my master page. So it did move correctly to how it should be in the document for facing pages. But because that one begins on the other page, I would have to move that over. So that's a very good catch. See, I should have you guys proofread everything for me. And that's also why friends are important, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Because the more that you have your own eyes staring at something, I guarantee it's the more you'll just get used to saying your same work over and over, and you sometimes may miss details. All right, so that should be.
In the text floor, yeah, can't talk. Getting the text to wrap around the image.
Yes, I can show that right now. So we're going to shift click this page right here, or actually, all right, we're going to load some text. So I'm going to go back to my example files. Even though this one is way too big, actually, I'm going to go to this because that's shorter. All right. Black arrow, red arrow, and link. And then what you will do to add in that text wrap. So first you want to make sure that window, you have that text wrap panel open. So it's a specific panel option. So open that, go ahead and add it to your panel. And the more you do this, the more you can actually save your workspace to be everything you need. Then all you have to do with the black arrow selected is select your image, open the text wrap panel, and you can actually have it adjust as you would like it. Now this is a brand new select subject text wrap, and it may or may not work exactly as we want. It's also taking very long. All right. So within this text wrap, you can actually manually adjust the text wrap with whichever setting you have adjusting here. I was trying to go through each to show you what it would look like. So you can have a purely top only text wrap. So if you're adding an image at the end of a chapter, this last one right here is the one I would select. This one right here is top and bottom only, but it does take out the text from either side. So that's not a bad option if you have one in the middle of a page. This one right here is supposed to be surrounding. It's supposed to be a much tighter text wrap. And this one right here is, again, a tighter text wrap, but not as tight as this one that is currently still loading. Now this first one is through. You can see the lines going completely over the subject, and that's not going to be helpful for our book creation because you want to be able to view your images. And underneath you can see top, bottom, that link symbol again, left, right. So you can also manually adjust how much of a text wrap that you want. And then you have both right and left sides, etc. I would really like to cancel that. It's taking way too long to process.
It's probably trying to figure it out because the image box is almost at the same width as the margins. So if you shrink that, it might wrap around everything.
That is also true. It's a brand new feature I had just updated. Whoa, see, and there you go. Subject aware wrapping. So let's go back. And as you can see, that's not what we want. It's practically through. So what we're actually going to do, go back to our black arrow, select that again. We're going to choose the second one. And we're actually going to increase on the top and just kind of drag that around. Looks like I accidentally created some extra text boxes. So that's a quick and easy way to do it. You can also see that my character style is not the same. So you can update that real quick as well. Quick and easy, add in our paragraph styles that we already created, our drop cap. Looks like that's lowercase, and you can fix that by just going up here again to your text. Select that to quickly update that without having to do anything on your keyboard. All right. So did that make sense for showing how to place around text? And you can also always check what you have on a layer, how many images you have, by going to your layers panel. I love the layers panel. It shows you exactly what you have on each page.
Here's a good question, Caitlin. Will the image move with this text if the text reflows?
You will have to select that in the text wrap. So if you're wanting to make sure it flows with your text. There is a way to do this. Trying to remember. It may not flow, it may not go with your text in InDesign like it will in Microsoft Word. Mostly because with file place, you're placing it right there on your document. The way to get it to flow is actually not going to be text wrap, it's going to be with an anchor point. So an anchor point is a little bit more advanced, but it is a feature you can add. Let me see, I think it's under object. Anchored object. So that would be an object style that you can add. So going to Window and Styles, you can open Object Styles. Just add that to your panel again. So adding an anchor point, what you're doing then is you're saying, I want this to be specifically under this one. So for some reason, it's not letting me add that. These are really good questions, by the way. That's a great question. All right.
Yeah, that might be a good one to pop into the lynda.com question and find the appropriate instructional video and watch that segment for.
Yes.
They're very useful because they're not all long segments. They're nice and chopped up, so you can jump around to something specifically you need to learn real quick.
Yes. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty on that one, but in InDesign, I do know the feature is called insert an anchored object. So let me see if I can't do that specifically. Insert, there we go. Graphic, object state, object style 1, inline or above line. Yeah, this is where you can adjust it. And if you want it to stay pretty much where you're putting it, you can prevent manual positioning. I personally like being able to adjust everything I put into a document. So as you can see, it uses that rectangle frame tool to adjust. And I adjusted it. It's probably on the next page now. It is. It is indeed. So by clicking that anchor, as you can see, it popped up with instructions. So shift drag to move in line with text. So shift, and you can actually pretty much drag wherever, and you can actually adjust then your text wrap with it by going there or going to object style, selecting it, go here to text wrap, and let's go ahead and make it top and bottom, and okay. So it can be very finicky and kind of hard to move, but this is the way that you would add it. And honestly, doing anchored objects is going to take a little bit more practice so that you get it to move with your text. But you can see by typing, it's going to move with it. So it's all about how you're going to adjust and set up your anchored object rules, okay? Does that answer or at least demonstrate that process a little bit better? So for that then, you would just do Control D, and you can actually add in your image then. Right click, change that, right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally.
Yeah, that was actually a great question and really pertinent to this. If you're doing your family book and you're putting a particular family photo next to text about that family, but you're flowing in text, that would be very, very helpful.
Another option you can do if you're ever unhappy with how your anchored object is set up, you can change how that position works. You can do a custom and make sure that it's centered to the center. You can also make sure it's relative to text frame, or you can make sure that it's the anchor marker, if that makes sense. You can also make sure it stays within the boundaries. Definitely mess with it. Make sure that you are getting the placement that you want. Okay, because all of these things. So your anchor marker, that's the anchor tool you can actually add within the text. So let's see how that works. For adjusting, scroll up, scroll down, that we can see it again. So now, as you can see, I click and dragged off of that anchor, and now I'm dragging within the text. So let's say I want it after this paragraph. So now I have nice space in between. Another thing you can do with an anchored object specific, something I think would be beneficial for family history book creation, is adding like a figure 1, a notation explaining who's in the photo, a caption. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, guys. So you can actually, I would create another paragraph style, another character style. I would actually just call this one italic. So double that, base it off of paragraph. Again, italic. You're going to want that to be smaller text and distinct from your body text. So again, I would recommend changing your font size for that, hitting OK. This is where you're going to go back over here to your type tool. And what you can do is actually over here in the gray, your workspace, click and drag to create that. Go ahead and type like figure 1. My caps lock is on, but I can still apply that style. I can go up here and change the font on that. Well, ideally I could. It's not working quite as planned. That's okay. Black arrow, and I'm actually going to drag that over here with the image. I'm going to resize this and just put it underneath. And what I want to do is shift click, because what I want to do is actually, whoops, undo. What I want to do is group that figure with the image. So it's not letting me do that, but what you can do is you can actually group these two together. You can group your caption with the anchored object. So what you may end up having to do is go to Object, Anchored Object, and insert another text box with that and group it within that section. And you can group items by going up here to Object and Group and Ungroup. So just for fun, what we're going to do is go to Options. So I have that one selected. We're going to cancel. That's selected, we're going to actually insert a new one. Basic text frame, paragraph style. Let's see here. Okay. So it creates a new one. It's a text file, and you can actually apply a new text within that. And then you could probably group it together. Very, very good questions. And I would love to explore more of this with you guys, but it does look like we're out of time for today. Were there any final questions?
I don't see anybody typing. Looks good, but yeah, we're at our end stop, unfortunately.
But I want to thank you for your great questions, because this class, it really is about what you guys are interested in, what you need to know. So do please fill out our survey, check out our Genealogy Center website and our YouTube channel for more information. But the more information you guys can give us on what you're interested in and what you want to know more, the better able we are to generate content. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. And thank you, Trey, for your excellent moderating and forwarding of questions.